Hi, I'm William Spaniel. Let's learn about international relations. Today's topic is the definition of terrorism, and we're concluding our unit on terrorism by asking the question, what makes a terrorist a terrorist? Now, this is a question that I have conveniently ignored for the first 8 lectures on terrorism, and there's a good reason why I've been ignoring this question. It's because it just simply doesn't have a good answer. There is no commonly agreed upon definition of terrorism in political science, or with politicians, or in the media, or even with you and your friends in everyday life. However, we do have a bunch of necessary conditions. Again, these are necessary conditions. These are qualities that a group must have for a terrorist label to be placed upon the group, but this is not a set of sufficient conditions. So, for example, a terrorist group must be violent. If a terrorist group is not violent, then it's not a terrorist group, it's just a bunch of protesters. A terrorist group must target civilians. If a terrorist group does not target civilians, then it's not a terrorist group, it's just a group that's organized and involved in a military conflict. And then the last necessary condition we have for terrorism here is that a terrorist group needs to have political goals. If a terrorist group does not have political goals, then it's not a terrorist group, it's a bunch of psychopaths. Again, though, these are not sufficient conditions for being a terrorist group. These are just a bunch of necessary conditions. And this leads us to this awkward little conclusion here, which is that one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. So a lot of what terrorism is in people's heads is a matter of perspective. What one person is willing to call a terrorist group, another person is not. And so this is pretty awkward, and it often leads you to the conclusion that terrorism is very often just a buzzword, and it doesn't really have any deep meaning behind it, at least not yet, because we don't have a commonly agreed upon definition. This is something that people say when they see something they don't particularly like, and there's often very good reason for people not to like these sorts of attacks, because they are targeting civilians and they're killing civilians. And these are innocent civilians who aren't involved in the political actions, perhaps, that the terrorist group wants to overturn. But nevertheless, what one person is going to be calling a terrorist, another man is going to be calling a freedom fighter. So that wraps up our unit on terrorism. I hope you enjoyed this unit, and I hope to see you next time. Take care.